Rob, we opened up talking about the Cowboys being shellacked 42-10 last night in a game everyone in the NFL world wanted to see, and really became a rout pretty quickly. And we talked about Brock Purdy. Is he for real? So we kind of looked at it from the 49ers standpoint. But obviously, the Cowboys standpoint is also wildly important. They are viewed as one of the elite teams, or at least were before last night, viewed as one of the elite teams in the league, viewed as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. You and others in the national media picked them to win the Super Bowl. And they've had some terrific wins over bad teams. But yesterday, in a game that they were anticipating just as much as the rest of us, I mean, they just wet the bed. And so here's the question I want to throw at you, Rob. Are the Cowboys contenders for the Super Bowl or pretenders? They're 3-2. They lost to Arizona before they lost, last night.
They're still in the mix. I mean, people, obviously it's the degree at when you lose like that. When you give up 42 points and it's that ugly, Chris, people are going to look at it and say, you're trash, you can't win. Going to San Francisco and losing is not like the end of the world. If they would have lost that game by 3 points or by a touchdown or something, it would be like, okay, you went to San Francisco and you lost. But they got hammered. Didn't. No, I know, right. But they got hammered. But it doesn't mean that you can't win. Last year, didn't we see the Chiefs lose to the Colts, Chris? Or who'd they lose to?
Well, they lost to the Colts.
And
by 3, I think.
Yeah, they lost a game that they had no business losing
to. The Bills.
Right. There were games that teams can, and here's the reason why I'm not. Despite giving up 42 points in the whole, they're still there. Dallas's defense is still in the top 10. Chris, that's how good it was. That despite that, they're still. Is it Rob G? Top 5 or top 10? Is it the last time we looked at the defense? We talked about top 5, Chris. Excuse me, I said top 10. They're top 5, which means they're in the hunt.
Top 5, in yards. Yeah. Yards allowed.
So I
they're
can't.
Top 10 in points allowed.
I can't write them off as a defense like that, because if you get good play offensively. And are they dead? No, they're not dead.
Can they get good play offensively?
Well, I mean,
great play. They're gonna need great.
But if they have a Michael Parsons, Chris, they have playmakers on defense. I can't write them off because they had a terrible loss in Week 5. I can't.
Look. I didn't pick them to get to the NFC title game, so I didn't have them getting to the Super Bowl anyway.
I understand.
But I have, Rob, believed all season long that the NFC, the top tier of the NFC, had 3 teams. It had the Niners, it had the Eagles, both of whom are undefeated, and it had the Cowboys. And this changes, stuff fluctuates. But right now, after the way they got beat down yesterday, and of course, there wasn't their first loss of the year. They're 3-2. I've dropped them a tier. I don't think for now, maybe they'll come back. They're not on the same level as the San Francisco 49ers. And I think right now the Niners look like the best team in football. They look better than Kansas City. They look better than Buffalo. They look better than Miami. They look better than Philadelphia. But I think Philadelphia is a team that could match the physicality of the Niners. And that's why I would give them a shot. But Dallas, the thing about that game last night, Rob, Dallas, I mean, they were playing a team that's smarter. The play calling and execution of the Niners compared to the Cowboys, and I've talked about this with Mike McCarthy, whether it's clock management, game management late in games, it's been bad at times. And you saw a huge difference in that yesterday. But not only were the Niners smarter, in my view, they were tougher. They were stronger. They pushed the Cowboys around. They dominated time of possession. I mean, the Cowboys didn't get a first down in the first quarter. They had like 6 yards in the whole first quarter. And they got pushed around in addition to outwitted. And so I've dropped them a peg. Now, anything can happen in NFL playoffs. We've seen wild card teams win Super Bowls. So, yeah, they got a shot. And I definitely I can't imagine them not making the playoffs.
Whenever
and
you
if
have
you
a
get in the tournament, you got that defense, though. What is that defense? They beat up on Danny Dimes. They beat up on Zach Wilson. They beat up on Mac Jones.
All right, but wait a minute.
They looked horrendous last night.
Okay.
I mean, they got mistreated, and they knew this wasn't them overlooking the Niners. This was them talking about how big the game was.
Okay, but let me say this to you, though. I hear what you're saying. But you had Micah Parsons as the MVP of the league after the first game.
He was after two games.
But you're now saying that he didn't play anybody, that when you were picking him.
I didn't say him, but the defense is 11 guys.
I agree.
And they lost one of their best players in Trayvon Diggs. I'm not saying the defense is a joke.
They're still top 5 and top 10.
Well, first of all, that's statistics, and then you start looking at who have you played. I'm not saying they don't have a good defense. But I'm saying that defense was supposed to be historic. We thought it was historic. If you're historic, you don't give up 42. And Rob, let's keep it real. Brock Purdy essentially sat the whole fourth quarter, as did the rest of the starters. And, skill players, stars. They could have put up 50 on them boys. Plus.
Yeah, but you could have a stinker Chris, I hear what you're saying. But it doesn't mean that the season is over after week 5.
Nobody said the season's over. All I'm saying is they are a tier below San Francisco and I think Philadelphia, which is still undefeated. That's what I've learned. And again, it wasn't even like it was just last night. You said you could have a stinker. They've had 2 in the last 3 weeks. And look, the defense is really good. It's not the best in the league. I think the Niners and the Eagles defense is better. Buffalo's injury ravaged at this point. Kansas City's defense is pretty good, but they got a great defense. You got Micah Parsons, who's legitimately a great individual defender, but one guy can't, do everything. But Rob, the offense, the offense hasn't looked great all year, even in their blowouts. They didn't have to do much against, in the 3 teams they routed. But their red zone, they didn't worsen the red zone numbers yesterday because they didn't get into the red zone.
At least they're consistent.
But, Rob, they are 30th in the NFL in red zone efficiency. And Tony Pollard, you and I both are fans of his. He's a very good running back. But he is a shifty scat back type. Zeke is not as good as him anymore, but whether it's Dowdle, somebody, they're going to have to get somebody to get some tough yards for them.
Right.
So that'll open things up for Pollard more to do what he's done in the past. Because Rob, if they got to put it on Dak's shoulders, I don't think he can carry it.
Well, let's do this too. It's not just Dak, and I agree with you on that as far as thinking that you could do it with just Dak Prescott on his shoulders, because we've seen that that's probably not going to happen. But Kellen Moore, Chris, let's not forget, was their offensive coordinator, who's now not there anymore, and I think that has had an effect as well on the Cowboys. Rob G has some numbers.
Yeah, 2022, last season, they averaged 26.5 offensive yard points per game. This season, through the first 5 weeks, down to 21.2 total yards per game.
That's just offensive. So is that points? Or?
Points per game, yes. Because right now they've scored.
Because you're talking about the defense.
Yeah, their defense has scored a lot of,
right.
Which is they're not sustainable, to be honest with you. I mean, it's great.
No,
you can't.
Right, that's what when they played the Jets and Giants.
Right, their yards per game is down 28 yards per game. Their yards per play is down a full half yard. And on the flip side, the Chargers, after averaging 22.5 points per game last season, are currently up to 27.5 in Kellen Moore's first year there.
Well, look, Kellen Moore, and that's what I was talking about, being smarter and executing better. The Niners over the Cowboys yesterday. Kellen Moore was that creative guy, right? Kellen Moore was that, kind of one of those new school offensive coordinators who was creative and came up with all these great plays. And the story of the year, Rob, was that Dallas had, I don't mean this as an insult, but it kind of, I'll use the word simplified. I was going to say dumbed down, but they simplified the offense, right? And it was going to be more complimentary. They weren't going to try to score quite as fast as they did. Give the defense some rest. All of that stuff. And now yesterday it looked too simplified. And in the red zone, I think, look, Kellen Moore, Ezekiel Elliott, and Dalton Schultz, the tight end, I think all of those departures have hurt the Cowboys, particularly in the red zone. And so they're still some people, Rob, have been saying they're not going to make the playoffs. I can't imagine that.
Oh, the Cowboys?
Throwing that out there. Yeah, I would be stunned. They're still a very good team. They won 12 games.
If they don't make the playoffs, something really went
McCarthy
bad.
would get fired, and it'd be interesting to see what they do with Dak. But Rob, I've been a guy that I'm on record. I thought Dak was going to become an elite quarterback. I no longer think that. And to be honest, the way the Cowboys are right now, at least, I don't think he can lead them to a Super Bowl.
He's going the other way, too.
And Chris, I think they got to be stacked around him and make sure all he does is manage.
And we talked about this before, and I remember Tony Dungy got some heat for it. But I remember when when Dak got hurt?
And Cooper Rush came.
And he said it was a blessing in disguise. Now maybe the Cowboys will get back to their strength, which was running the football, Chris, because Dak got
and he didn't mean
crazy.
That as an insult to Dak, but yeah. His
point was that when they were good, Chris, when they had something going, they had the best running back in the league, and Ezekiel was running the football, and they had a good defense, and all he needed Dak to do was not turn the ball over and make those third downs that you need every so often. That was it.
Yep. And they did get back to that with Cooper Rush because they knew Cooper couldn't do all that, and so they were running the ball and they were winning. Rob, look, and Tony Pollard, you and I have talked about him. The last 2 years, right? Well, his rookie year averaged 5.3 yards a carry. Second year, 4.3. Third year, 5.5.
Wow.
Last year, 5.2. And this year now, Rob, as the featured back, not as a change of pace guy, not as somebody that gives you a completely different look than Ezekiel Elliott, he's averaging 4.2 yards a carry. It's not, bad, but he's not been nearly as special, Rob, as he had been as a change of pace guy than Ezekiel Elliott. So I think they've dropped a tier below the Niners and the Eagles, who I think are now the class of the NFC. But look, one thing I agree with, Rob, Micah Parsons said this could be a blessing.
Hey.
And I think that's how they should look at it. I see it.
Did you see the way that's how
they should look at it.